The first day of season 3 of Road UFC is already in the books. These events just seem to fly by. There's no commercials, there's really no filler in between the fights. It's just one after another, banger after banger, prospect after prospect. And by the end of these, I feel just like, what just happened? I just watched what 9 was supposed to be 10 fights, one got canceled, but really enjoyed watching all of today's fights. Some really good, interesting performances, some good fights. Not a whole lot of finishes, but that could just speak to the quality of the competition and a little bit more even fights and maybe we're used to, at least for the most part. If you don't know me, my name's Chris. I'm the owner of MMA Ecosystem. I report on Asian MMA and kind of specialize in this Road to UFC tournament that airs on UFC Fight Pass. I've also worked for Tapology, worked for a lot of different publications, worked as an MMA manager before. And honestly, a lot of these fighters that are in the tournament were fighters that I talked to about bringing about working as their manager. So a lot of the fighters, even in this Road to UFC tournament, I am close with. I know them, by a conversational sort of way, and really fun to see them unfold the next step of their journey. A lot of them fighting kind of in obscurity for a while, and then they're finally thrust into this big stage, able to really prove whether they can hang or not. And there was some surprises for me, some fighters that I felt like overperformed. And that was really fun to see. I'm mostly talking about Ming. She pulled off a pretty solid performance against Seo Yadam. Masuto Kawana, really fun stuff from him. And let's back up a little bit first. Let's go through these fights one by one. I'll just kind of give you my thoughts. This BTE Bol versus Kim Han Sol fight, things kind of kicked off in this non-tournament fight in the welterweight division, and I wasn't really sure what to expect from this fight from both Kim and BTE Bol. We've got kind of mixed results in the past. BTE Bol had that weird his road to UFC journey has been weirder than anyone's. Missed weight and so fight was canceled, and then had the DQ win over Kiwon Bean. So I almost feel like one more fight for him was almost kind of owed, just to see if he could sort things out, kind of just have either a decisive win or loss, and then whatever's next from there. Kim Han Sol was really interesting because there's a lot of Korean zombie MMA guys in this Road UFC season. He's one. Hong Jun Yong, another one. But I wasn't really sure what to expect from him because he has not fought outside of Road to UFC for the last couple of years. He was supposed to fight for the Top Brights promotion in Japan earlier this year against Gleison Tibau. That fight did not happen. Either way, here he is in the tournament, and kind of sounded like he was like, yeah, if I can't get into the UFC with this fight, then I don't know if I'm going to keep fighting MMA. Kind of a weird spot to be in, but ultimately BTE Bol, I think he's been one of those guys that has potential. I think he's just kind of slowly coming along. But for him, it was the boxing that kind of started to make its way into the fight in rounds 2 and 3. Wrestled a little bit, and Kim Han Sol is a really solid veteran, and to get a win over that guy, I think, is pretty impressive. I agree with the decision. The decision was 29-28 for BTE Bol across the board. I don't personally think that he'll probably get into the UFC with this win, but I mean, you're right there. You're right. In the UFC's good graces, it's sometimes hard to find welterweight fights in Asia. So maybe for him, he may want to try to stay in the United States, keep training there, maybe get a fight or two more with LFA, or maybe they'll just put him on Contender Series. There's an idea. I have been hearing that there may be some Asian fighters in this season of Dana White's Contender Series. So that could be really interesting. So my personal choice would be to put BTE Bol on Contender Series against another solid welterweight prospect, and then see if he can make an impression there. For Kim Han Sol, I mean, it sounds like he may retire after this fight, so we'll see what happens there. The first fight of the strawweight tournament was between Feng Xiaozan and Kieran Singh. And, I've been singing Feng Xiaozan's praises for a while. She's not a fighter that's been on a lot of prospect lists, a lot of people's radar. But I've been telling you guys, she's been one to watch. She right away, I mean, you saw just like almost like it was a weight class of difference. She was 8 inches taller than Kieran Singh. Massive reach advantage, just was lighting her up right from the get go. And just looked like a really one sided, almost unfair fight. She takes Kieran Singh to the ground and finishes her off with ground and pound in that first round. I don't know if Feng Xiaosong can go the whole way. She is going to have to go up against fighters like Miki Motono next. She's going to eventually fight if she gets past Miki Motono again, she's going to have to fight the winner of Dong Huashang and Sherming. So that could be a tough out as well. Two really good veterans there. So she's only 22 years old, so even if she doesn't make it all the way to the UFC contract here, I think Feng Xiaozan is going to be a mainstay in the UFC strawweight division for a long time. It may or may not be right now, I don't know, but she showed just a lot of good things against Kieran Singh. I do think she probably out of not even just out of strawweight, but out of the whole tournament as a whole, I think that she had one of the easier routes to the semifinals. So there is that, but she capitalized on it, right? If you're supposed to have an easy fight, you make it look easy, and she did. So Feng Xiaozan, put her on your prospect list and keep her there because she's one to watch. She trains out of a smaller gym in southern China called Chuanbo Martial Arts, coached by kind of a Chinese veteran, Yuan Chuanbo. Been really close with her, working with her, and I think that just the fact that she's as good as she is now, um, you know, not coming from a big super gym, not training with a lot of other elite fighters, really shows you both like the solid coaching of Yuan Chuanbo, but also the raw potential of Feng Xiaozan. Um, I'm expecting a lot of big things from her going forward. All right, moving on to the featherweight division. The first fight here was Shin Haraguchi versus Hong Junong. And, this is a weird fight overall. Hong is a decent grappler and really experienced guy. So Shin Haraguchi had a hard time taking him down and keeping him down, even throughout the other road to UFC fights that he's been in. We've seen that he can struggle not necessarily with taking fighters down, but keeping them down and then causing damage, creating a lot of offense from the ground. It's only been 3 months since he last fought Rong Ju in the finals of the last season at lightweight. And so there's really not a whole lot of time for him to like rest, recover, add to his game, round things out. I was one of the people saying that he should have taken this year off to try to round out his skills a little bit more. And I'm sticking by that. I don't know. I feel less and less confident in him going all the way to the finals and winning a contract just because he's shown himself to be a lot bit one dimensional so far. He still got the win. He was able to apply that pressure, take Hong down over and over again, press him up against the cage. But I just would like to see, he talks about fighting like Khabib, and I know that comparison gets made every single week, it seems. But, I would love to see him do, what Khabib did is he was able to punch from all these different angles, from transitions, from the clinch on the ground. And I would like to see him able to, you gotta keep someone in the position to be able to throw the punches. You can't give up that position. So I just think that there's several levels of his game. He's got endless potential. I'll give him that. But there are several levels of his game that I feel like just need to be added in there if he ever wants to be in the UFC and competitive with fighters there. Because being able to just pressure fighters, take them down, but not hold them down, that's not going to get you very far in the UFC. So he will be fighting, let's see, Shin Haraguchi will be fighting Ju Kong Jie in the semifinals. I'll get to that in just a second. So the judges' scorecards on that Shin Haraguchi fight, 30-27, 37-27, and 30-25 for Shin Haraguchi. I wouldn't have scored the 30-25 just because there wasn't the damage I felt that would warrant that. But 30-27, I think, is what I would have gone with. The fight between Hwang Fei-ar and Miki Motono was canceled because Hwang Fei-ar missed weight. Miki Motono opted to advance directly to the semifinal, so that fight was cut. Jukong Jie versus Tetsuya Ando. Ando is getting a little bit older. I believe he's maybe 34 years old. One championship veteran. I think a solid guy for the tournament, but was a little bit of a surprise. Fighting Jukong Jie, who has not really fought on any kind of international stage just yet, but looked pretty good so far fighting in China, kind of a proven finisher. And in this fight, he showed that he is absolutely one of the top prospects coming out of China. He was electric and just lit up Tetsuya Ando throughout the whole fight. I thought he was probably going to finish the fight by the end of the first round, but Ando, just a resilient, tough as nails kind of dude, and was able to somehow survive all the big strikes. There were head kicks, there were body kicks, the right hand, the left hook, everything was landing for Jukong Jie. And just a pleasure to watch that fight. It did seem that in the second round, you kind of saw him pull back the pace a little bit. It was kind of like, if I can't finish you in this first round, I've got to sort of space out my offense over the next 2 rounds. And so you saw him pull back a little bit more, be a little bit more measured, because it seemed like he may have realized that he was starting to butt up to the end of his gas tank. And so he was wise to notice that and not just empty the gas tank. I think it was smart on his part to have that good awareness of your body to know, okay, I can't fight at this pace for 15 minutes. So how can I sustainably still put out the offense, not take off, and also not empty the gas tank? And I think he was able to still clinch those next 2 rounds pretty decisively. Ando, by this end of the second round, kind of turned things up a little bit. You saw him get a little bit wild, land a couple punches on Jukong Jie as he was kind of pulling back his offense, creating some more openings. But ultimately, this was Jukong Jie's fight. He's going to be fighting Shin Haraguchi next in the semifinals. And I want to say that this fight could resemble the Rongju fight against Shin Haraguchi. Maybe Shin will land a couple takedowns, but tire himself out perhaps. Jukong Jie will start to defend the takedowns. And then on the feet, it's going to be all Jukong Jie. I mean, I would put Tetsuya Ando ahead of Shin Haraguchi in terms of both defensive and offensive capabilities on the feet. And Jukong Jie is just an absolute hammer when his feet are planted on the ground. So the hesitation I have is the gas tank of Jukong Jie. Is he going to be able to defend the takedowns when Shin Haraguchi makes him work? Is he going to be able to sustain his gas tank long enough to be able to, work his own game on the ground, have the strength to get back up to his feet over and over again? That's the big question I have. Inevitably, I mean, he's part of the PI system. So that they're looking at that fight, seeing some of the energy management as one of the big areas that they can, not necessarily the management, but the overall gas tank size of Jukong Jie. I would think that's probably something they're going to work at trying to expand a little bit going into fight Shin Haraguchi, because you need to have the biggest gas tank that you can have. So I think that's a really interesting and amazing fight. Honestly, a fight that could happen in the finals. Featherweight has a lot of great fighters. Excited to see how that bracket unfolds. So that was episode 1. Episode 2 began with a big one. This was Wang Tong making her not UFC debut, but kind of like her introduction to UFC fans, more or less, fighting against Peru's Paula Luna. I was always confused at why they chose Paula Luna as her opponent. Maybe they were just trying to, because I say that because I feel like there are so many other flyweights that they could have matched her up against to give her the hardest possible test. outside the UFC. And I don't think Paula was really that kind of really stiff test that they should have been looking for. I don't know if this was just a decision to work with a management company that with Iridium. Paula Luna's with Iridium. They have a good relationship. Lots of Iridium fighters in Road to UFC as well as the UFC. And so I don't know if that was just part of it there, but either way, I was told that Wang Tong would get into the UFC if she could score a finish. She absolutely did that. She's known as a striker, but in this fight, she took Paula Luna to the ground, submitted her with a mounted guillotine choke in the first round, about 3 minutes in, and really by now she's shown herself to be the full package deal. She can grapple, she can submit, she can strike, she can knock people out. She, I mean, yeah, they said it on the broadcast. Some people think that she could be ranked in the UFC flyweight division now. I wouldn't debate that. I think that's probably spot on. And going into I would be shocked. I don't know why they wouldn't sign her to the UFC. This was just a showcase, basically. This was putting that final stamp of approval. There's nothing more that needs to be seen. I think Wang Song absolutely should go to the UFC. And even like I don't want to say like a fast track, like an Alex Bejeda kind of thing, but like if she debuts in the UFC later this year, I think that she should get someone like at least halfway up the whole roster, if not just outside the top of the top 15. I think it's worth seeing how good she really is and really test her, really push her. So I wouldn't be surprised if they try to give her the fast track. I mean, they did that with Zhang Weili at strawweight. Um, and Wang Tong, I would say, arguably comes in with more hype, more credentials than Zhang Weili. At least in kickboxing, she's got that win over Valentina Shevchenko. Chinese MMA as a whole is a lot bigger than it used to be when Zhang Weili made her UFC debut. So there is that. But Wang Tong does have a lot of hype, a big fan base already. So I'm excited to see what's next. I would be sorely disappointed if her next fight was not in the UFC. Going on to the strawweight fight between Pria Sharma versus Dong Huashang. This is I liked the inclusion of Pria Sharma in this tournament. I've always felt like she was one of my top picks for to put an Indian fighter in Road to UFC, especially for the women. I mean, Pooja Tomar just got signed to the UFC. So outside of her, it's Pria. It's Sonam Zumba. Sonam Zumba was supposed to be in Road to UFC, but I think she had an injury, so she couldn't make it, or something. She was the UFC's first pick, and eventually that was given to Kiran Singh when Sonam Zumba couldn't make it. But Pria Sharma, I think, is she's a fairly one-dimensional fighter, but she's strong, she's tough, and she's a good wrestler. And so I think because of that, she was qualified in my book to be in the tournament. The only problem is that she got matched up against another really good wrestler at strawweight. There's a lot of good wrestlers in the strawweight tournament, but she gets matched up against Dong Huashang, who also comes from a wrestling background. So this is a tough fight for her. If you watched my preview on last week's MMA Eco podcast, the fight went exactly how I predicted on that podcast. I said that their wrestling could nullify each other. And in that case, Dong Huashang is going to use her boxing just to light up Pria. And that's pretty much what we saw. It was not the most urgent performance from Dong Huashang. And I don't know if that was just her demeanor, if that was taking time off, different things, nerves, mental things to get over. I know she's been through a lot the last couple years. So I don't know what it was, but there wasn't much of like a killer instinct in the fight, but it was still dominant for Dong Huashang. Really not much answer to Dong's attack, both her striking and her wrestling that Pria could give. Pria is a tough fighter. She's strong, but ultimately Dong Huashang proved that she is still one of the top female prospects in Chinese MMA right now. Even though it wasn't the most electric performance, she was dominant against a good fighter. So she advances to the semifinals against Shi Ming, which I'll get to in a second. Next up in the featherweight division was, I think, probably the best fight of the evening or the morning if you're in the US, was Song Young Jae versus Masuto Kawana. A lot of people, I looked on Tapology, and I think like close between 85 and 90% of Tapology users had predicted Song Young Jae to win the fight. And I think that was pretty off. And I explained why in last week's podcast. But Song Young Jae is still pretty early in his MMA career, around 5 or 6 pro fights to his record. Whereas Masuto Kawana had already fought some pretty good fighters. He'd won the Gladiator FC belt. Song Young Jae, to his credit, had won the AFC lightweight belt, I believe. But Masuto had fought much better fighters, and he's also a pretty credentialed wrestler, really solid. And anytime you have a really solid wrestler fighting someone who's a little more inexperienced, it's hard to make a solid pick. And for that reason, I actually picked Masuto Kawana to win this fight by decision, which is exactly what he did. Um, Song Young Jae, really solid striker, but Masuto all over him from the beginning. Really action-packed fight, especially the second round. Song Young Jae pretty close to taking out Masuto with the punches on the feet. You started to see maybe he emptied out his gas tank. Kawana did earlier in the fight. And so Song, he's able to start defending some of the takedowns. Really interesting stuff. And then he starts really badly damaging Kawana on the feet. I thought we were getting close to a stoppage, like a standing TKO, but Masuto responded really well, started diving for the takedowns, and actually able to get Song to the ground and disrupt his whole rhythm. So, and then the third round, you see Kawana working back to the takedowns again, but almost in contrast to like a Shin Haraguchi, he's actually pretty good at throwing punches from the clinch and in transition. So he puts a stamp on the fight, back and forth fight, and really happy to see a guy like Masuto Kawana, who's been pining for this kind of shot for a long time. Not only does he get into the tournament, but he has a great performance, kind of vintage performance against a really highly touted prospect in Song Young Jae. Honestly, a pretty bad night for South Korea. And I know it's not totally fair to say that because and I've heard this from Korean fans a lot over the last couple weeks that they're disappointed with the selection of Road to UFC from Korea this year. Excuse me, I get it. A lot of top prospects that didn't make it or got picked over or couldn't make it for whatever reason. A couple good prospects fighting tomorrow from Korea, and so it's not totally over just yet. But yeah, Song Young Jae, I thought that he would be a good prospect, even though I didn't pick him to get past Masuto Kawana. So the scorecards in that fight, if I have these, I believe were 30-26, 29-27, and 29-27 for Kawana. So that means that two of those judges scored one round 10-9 for Kawana, one round 10-9 for Song, and then one round 10-8 for Kawana. And then another judge 10-9, 10-9, 10-8 for Kawana. All right, going on to a women's strawweight fight, the last one of the opening round. Shiming against Seo Yedam of South Korea. This was a hard fight for me to pick going into it. I felt like it was a pretty even contest. Seo Yedam is a great grappler. She's a brown belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Shiming, a really good catch wrestler. And I think it surprised everyone when Shiming landed that hellacious knee against Seo in the first round, dropping her. I mean, just you got to watch that thing over and over and over again. Just tons of snap to it. Could have finished the fight there. She pounces on Seo Yedam, tries to get the rear naked choke, kind of slips away from her, and then ends the round on top. But really strong way to start that first round for Shiming. She's a fighter that has not really fought. It's been a while since she's fought internationally. She used to fight for Road FC, but been a while, not even just been super active the last couple of years. So I didn't really know what to expect from her, but she had a pretty good showing. The second round was a lot more towards Seo Yedam, able to get Shiming on her back on the ground and use her grappling, although not really any offense that I don't think, if not for just holding her down and controlling her. If Shiming was able to land even some effective strikes on the feet, even maybe some submissions off her back, then I think that she could have even still took the round. But that round went to Seo Yadam. The last round was really close. I personally scored this last round for Seo Yadam. I thought that when they were on the feet, the punching combination advantage went to Seo Yadam, landed a little bit more damage, but not by a whole lot. But later in the round, Shiming kind of pressures Seo Yadam up against the cage, takedowns, all that good stuff. And so I guess the pressure of Shiming scored the round for her and all the judges. All three judges scored it 29-28 for Shiming. She advances to fight Dong Huaxiang, which if it's interesting. Overall, I would say on paper, Dong Huaxiang, I think that should be a fairly clear-cut win for her. I think she would be able to stuff the wrestling of Shiming and then basically use the same playbook against Pria Sharma that that she used to win against Pria. So I think that'll probably be a win for Dong Huaxiang. However, if her demeanor, if her urgency is the same as it was tonight, then you could see Shiming really press the pace and make the fight a little bit closer. So that's an interesting one. It's China versus China fight. And so I'll be looking forward to that. And then the last fight of the first day of Road UFC 2024 was Shabin fighting against Gula, who came in on just 10 days notice. Shabin, he's had several chances in Contender Series and Road UFC in the past, and kind of, not really, I think below the elite level, and not the best performances in the past. Either looked a little bit defensively lacking, or in the his last Road UFC fight, he got submitted by armbar. But then since then, he's had two pretty good performances in both WLF and in One Pride MMA. Looked really sharp there. I was really excited for him. What I've seen from him, I think I expected a vastly different performance than what we've seen in the past. And I think that he very well could make it to the finals this year. Against Gula, I mean, the guy wasn't even in training camp, so it was far from his best performance. Not a very active performance from Gula. For Shabin, I mean, he did exactly what he should have done. He stayed on the outside, just basically peppered Gula with low kicks, with a solid 1-2, tagged him over and over with that straight right. And Gula is a really hard guy to put away. And so didn't surprise me that the fight went the decision, but Shabin looked sharp, pretty much flawless the whole time, wins the decision against Gula. The scorecards were 30-27 across the board for Shabin. He will fight Muto Kawana in the semifinal round. And that is also a really hard fight to pick because we didn't really get to see Shabin's takedown defense in this fight or his last couple fights. So it'll be interesting to see how he reacts to the pressure and takedowns of Muto Kawana. Muto is a guy that gets in your face. He's going to throw a lot of volume at you. And so for a guy like Shabin, who likes to stay on the outside, very kind of finer points kind of striker, very interesting matchup and hard fight to pick. Both of these featherweight semifinal fights, really solid fights. I don't know if there's a lot of intention behind the brackets for Road UFC, but these I think are really well done. So those are the day one results and kind of my thoughts and opinions about them. As far as the next round of the tournament, I know we still have a whole nother day, but I don't know if I'll put out another reaction video to the day two results. But everything I know about round two is that it's supposed to take place in China, outside of Shanghai, sometime in the fall, late August or September. You could see a UFC event attached to it. So that would be something that'd be great to get a lot of Chinese fans here, since it's like at least half, if not more, Chinese fighters in there. It's almost becoming just like a Chinese promotion, bringing in some foreign fighters, pretty much. But really enjoyed today's fights. Hope you did too. And check out my Instagram page, my Twitter X page. I give tons of content throughout those. And I will see you guys tomorrow for day 2 of Road to UFC. But first, I've got to get some sleep. We'll see you later.